Fasting is not like any other diet. It is not a moment of deprivation. It's a gift you give yourself that will allow your body and brain to recover from the stressors of the modern world.
That's such a great quote.
It really sets the tone for Fast Like a Girl, the book we're diving into today on By the Pages. The book is by Dr. Mindy Pelz, and you can find a link to it in the description.
Oh, fantastic.
What really stood out to me is Dr. Pelz's argument that typical dieting advice just doesn't cut it for women because it ignores the impact of our hormones.
Yeah, she really emphasizes that.
She starts by outlining 5 common dieting pitfalls. She calls them the 5 failures of traditional dieting.
Honestly, I felt a little called out by some of these.
I can imagine. Many women struggle with these pitfalls over and over again. They're so ingrained in our diet culture.
The first one is calorie restriction. Dr. Pelz uses the Minnesota starvation experiment as a pretty stark example of what happens when you drastically cut calories. Right. This experiment back in the 1940s showed that severe calorie restriction doesn't just impact you physically. It can lead to psychological issues, too.
The participants actually experienced things like depression, anxiety, and even social withdrawal.
Exactly. And on top of that, there's the metabolic damage and the almost inevitable rebound weight gain.
Not exactly a recipe for long-term success or happiness. The next failure Dr. Pelz tackles is the low-fat craze. I mean, that dominated the diet scene for years, right?
It sure did. And unfortunately, pushing for low-fat foods often meant replacing fat with sugar and processed ingredients.
Which ultimately led to insulin resistance and more weight gain.
Yeah. It's ironic because a lot of those low-fat alternatives ended up being less healthy.
Another pitfall is over-exercising.
Especially when you combine it with restrictive diets, too much exercise can backfire.
How so?
Well, it can lead to injuries for one, and it can also mess with your hormonal balance. Instead of helping you progress, it can actually hinder it.
It's all about finding that balance, isn't it?
Definitely.
Okay, so then there's the whole detox with prepackaged foods trend.
Oh, yeah, those detox diets.
So many of them rely on these meals that are marketed as cleansing, but they're often full of chemicals and obesogens.
It's a classic case of marketing getting in the way of actual health.
And those substances can disrupt our hormones and actually make weight gain more likely.
It's true.
The 5th and final failure Dr. Pelz discusses is comparison and the one-size-fits-all approach to dieting. This one really hit home for me, especially in today's social media-driven world.
I think it resonates with a lot of women. It's so easy to compare ourselves to others and fall into the trap of thinking there's one magic diet plan that will work for everyone.
And when it doesn't work, we feel like we've failed.
Exactly. But the reality is, every woman's hormonal journey is unique. What works for one person may not work for another and can sometimes even be harmful.
So we end up discouraged and no closer to our health goals.
That's the problem with these generic approaches. They don't take individual needs into account.
After laying out these dieting failures, Dr. Pelz introduces fasting as an alternative. But she makes it clear that this isn't some trendy new fad diet.
No, she emphasizes that fasting is actually a return to our ancestral roots.
Right. For most of human history, food wasn't constantly available.
Exactly. Our bodies evolved to not only survive, but thrive during those periods of scarcity.
Dr. Pelz digs into the science behind fasting and how it activates these specific metabolic pathways that promote healing. One of the key ones she discusses is autophagy.
Autophagy is like a cellular self-cleaning process. Think of it as your cells taking out the trash.
So our cells have this built-in system for cleaning house. That's fascinating.
It is, and it's incredibly important for keeping our bodies functioning optimally.
So during autophagy, damaged cells are broken down and recycled, right?
Yes, the damaged parts are basically used to create new, healthy cells. It's like cellular rejuvenation.
Wow, so it has the potential to slow down aging.
That's one of the exciting possibilities that researchers are exploring.
Another pathway activated by fasting that Dr. Pelz talks about is ketosis.
Right. When you fast, your body runs out of its usual fuel source, which is glucose from carbohydrates.
So it has to find a new energy source.
Exactly. It starts burning fat for fuel instead. And that process creates these molecules called ketones.
Ketones, so that's where that term ketogenic diet comes from.
Exactly. And these ketones have a ton of benefits for our bodies and brains.
Like what?
Well, they can improve cognitive function, reduce inflammation, and help with appetite control, which can make fasting easier. They're a really efficient source of energy.
So you're saying that when I'm in ketosis, I might actually experience fewer cravings and feel sharper mentally?
That's the idea. Your brain loves ketones.
That's pretty amazing. So we've talked about autophagy and ketosis. What other benefits of fasting does Dr. Pelz discuss?
Well, one of the key things is that fasting reduces glycogen and insulin stores.
Remind me, what are those again?
Glycogen is how our body stores sugar, primarily in the liver and muscles. And insulin is the hormone that helps our cells absorb and use glucose.
So fasting forces our bodies to use up those stored sugar reserves.
Exactly. And that leads to weight loss and improves insulin sensitivity, which is essential for preventing and managing metabolic issues like type 2 diabetes.
It makes sense that if we're constantly eating, our bodies never have to tap into those stores.
Right. It's like we're always refueling before the tank is empty.
There's also some really interesting research on how fasting can reboot the immune system, right?
Yes, Dr. Pelz mentions the work of Dr. Walter Longo, who's done some fascinating studies on this.
What did he find?
His research showed that a 3-day water fast could trigger the regeneration of white blood cells. It's essentially like giving the immune system a fresh start.
Wow. So fasting can affect everything from our cells to our immune system. Before we go any further, if you're finding this deep dive into Fast Like a Girl, as fascinating as I am, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. We explore all kinds of interesting health and wellness topics here.
We do.
So now, getting back to the book, Dr. Pelz really emphasizes tailoring fasting practices to a woman's unique needs.
Especially considering the fluctuations in our hormones.
And she lays out 4 key pillars for what she calls fasting like a girl. The first is the hormonal hierarchy.
Right. It's all about recognizing the interconnectedness of our hormones.
And that it's not enough to just focus on one hormone in isolation.
Exactly.
So what's the main takeaway from this hormonal hierarchy?
Well, she emphasizes that managing cortisol, which is our stress hormone, and boosting oxytocin, the love hormone, are crucial for balancing our sex hormones, like estrogen and progesterone.
It's interesting how those are all connected.
They really are.
Okay, the second pillar is the fluctuation in sex hormones.
This one is all about understanding the cyclical nature of female hormones and how they change throughout the month.
So basically, where we are in our cycle impacts how we should approach fasting.
Exactly. Different phases require different strategies.
Makes sense. What about the impact of our toxic load? That's the third pillar, right?
Yes. Dr. Pelz explains how the toxins we accumulate over time can really disrupt our hormonal balance.
And that fasting, especially longer fasts, can help our bodies get rid of these toxins.
Exactly. It supports our natural detoxification processes.
It's amazing how our bodies have these built-in mechanisms for healing. The fourth pillar she highlights is supportive community.
This is so important, especially for women.
Why is that?
Well, having a community, a supportive network of people who understand what you're going through, can make the fasting journey so much more enjoyable and successful.
I can see that. Sharing experiences, offering encouragement and accountability.
Exactly. It creates that sense of camaraderie and reduces feelings of isolation.
Dr. Pelz then introduces a framework she calls the fasting cycle.
Yes, this is her roadmap for aligning fasting practices with the menstrual cycle.
So it takes into account those hormonal fluctuations we were just talking about.
Exactly. And she divides the cycle into 4 distinct phases, each with its own recommendations for how to approach fasting.
I love how she breaks it down like that. Can you walk us through these phases?
Absolutely. So the first phase is the power phase, which lines up with the follicular phase of your menstrual cycle.
And that starts on the first day of your period, right?
Yes, exactly. This is when your energy levels are naturally higher.
So it's a good time for longer fasts.
Dr. Pelz suggests that it is. It's an ideal time to tap into the power of autophagy and really give your cells a chance to renew themselves.
Makes sense. What's next?
Then comes the manifestation phase, which corresponds to the ovulatory phase.
So when you're ovulating.
Right. During this phase, she recommends shorter fasts and focuses on eating nutrient-dense foods to support hormonal balance.
Okay, so it's less about intense fasting and more about providing your body with the nourishment it needs.
Exactly. Then we move into the reflection phase, which aligns with the luteal phase.
That's the phase after ovulation.
Yes. And during this time, Dr. Pelz suggests a more moderate approach to fasting with an emphasis on foods that support liver and gut health.
Why is that?
Well, this phase is all about supporting estrogen detoxification.
Ah, I see. So our bodies are doing a lot of work behind the scenes during this time.
They certainly are. And then finally, we have the nurture phase, which occurs during the premenstrual phase.
So that's the week leading up to your period.
Yes, and during this time, Dr. Pelz recommends shorter fasts and incorporating more carbohydrate-rich foods.
To support the rising progesterone levels, right?
Exactly.
This fasting cycle really makes sense. It feels so much more intuitive than just following some generic diet advice.
I agree. It's all about working with your body's natural rhythms, not against them.
Dr. Pelz does point out that the fasting cycle is a guideline, not a rigid set of rules.
Right. It's important to remember that.
Our individual needs can vary depending on things like our stress levels, how active we are, and our overall health goals.
Absolutely.
So, for example, someone who's very active might need to shorten their fasting windows or incorporate snacks during their fasting periods.
That's a good example. And someone who's dealing with a lot of stress might need to ease into longer fasts more gradually.
It's really about listening to your body and finding what works best for you.
It really is. It's all about finding what feels right for you. One of the things I found really interesting in the book is how Dr. Pelz discusses different fasting durations and how they can be used for specific purposes.
Oh yeah, she goes into that in detail, doesn't she?
She does. She covers everything from intermittent fasting, where you're typically fasting for 13 to 16 hours each day, to longer fasts, like the 24-hour gut reset fast, and even the 72-hour immune reset fast.
I was fascinated by that too. It's like she provides a whole menu of fasting options.
Yeah. Exactly, and she links these different fasting durations to specific health outcomes. For example, she suggests that the 16-hour intermittent fast is great for improving insulin sensitivity and boosting fat burning.
And that one seems relatively easy to incorporate into your daily routine, right?
Yeah.
You basically just skip breakfast and have an earlier dinner.
Exactly. It can be as simple as that. Then there's the 24-hour gut reset fast, which she recommends for, well, resetting the gut.
As the name suggests.
Right. It can help to improve digestion, reduce bloating, and promote a healthy microbiome.
She even suggests doing this fast weekly for ongoing gut health maintenance.
She does.
I'm curious about the 72-hour immune reset fast. That one sounds pretty intense.
That's where things get really interesting. Dr. Pelz brings up Dr. Walter Longo's research again, specifically how this longer fast can actually regenerate stem cells and essentially reboot the immune system.
It's like hitting the reset button on your body's defenses.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And she suggests this fast for addressing chronic conditions, preventing disease, and potentially even slowing down aging.
It's amazing to think that simply not eating for a few days could have such profound effects on our health.
It really speaks to the incredible resilience and adaptability of the human body.
It does. Dr. Pelz also talks about metabolic switching.
Yes, this is a concept that often gets overlooked in discussions about fasting.
I have to admit, I'm not entirely sure what metabolic switching is. Can you explain it?
Sure. Imagine your body is like a hybrid car. It can run on gasoline, which is like glucose from carbohydrates, or it can run on electricity, which is like fat. Metabolic switching is basically the body's ability to seamlessly switch between these two fuel sources.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture.
Most people, because of their diets, are primarily sugar burners. They rely heavily on glucose for energy.
Which makes sense considering how many carbs we tend to eat.
Exactly. But when you fast, you deplete those glucose stores, and your body is forced to switch to burning fat for fuel. And that's where the magic happens.
We become fat-burning machines.
In a sense, yes. And this metabolic flexibility is not only essential for weight loss, but also for a whole host of other health benefits.
Like what kinds of benefits?
Well, Dr. Pelz explains how metabolic switching can enhance memory, balance the gut, potentially protect against cancer, and even elevate your mood.
How does it elevate your mood?
It can increase the production of certain feel-good neurotransmitters in the brain.
So it goes far beyond just weight loss. It's about optimizing our overall health and well-being.
Exactly. It's about tapping into our body's natural ability to heal and thrive. Another thing that really resonated with me is how Dr. Pelz emphasizes food quality, particularly when you're breaking a fast.
Oh, I agree. She's very specific about the types of foods you should eat to support your body after a fast.
She provides a whole framework for choosing foods that will balance your hormones, build muscle, and nourish your gut microbiome.
And she's pretty clear about avoiding processed foods, refined sugars, and unhealthy fats, especially when breaking a fast.
Right, because those foods can spike your blood sugar, disrupt your hormones, and basically undo a lot of the good work that fasting has done.
So it's not just about when we eat, but what we eat.
Absolutely. It's about making conscious choices that support our body's natural healing processes. I know we've covered a lot, but for someone who's brand new to fasting and wants to try it, where do they even begin?
That's a great question. It can feel overwhelming at first. What would you suggest?
Well, one simple way to start is by gradually extending your overnight fasting window. Maybe try pushing back breakfast by an hour or two and see how you feel.
So ease into it.
Exactly. Another strategy is to incorporate 1 or 2 24-hour fasts each month. This gives your digestive system a break and allows your body to tap into those fat-burning pathways.
And Dr. Pelz really stresses the importance of paying attention to your body's signals, right?
Absolutely. If you're feeling excessively hungry, lightheaded, or just not quite right, it's perfectly fine to adjust your fasting window or break your fast early. Fasting should never feel like a punishment or a struggle.
It's about finding that sweet spot, that balance that works for you.
Exactly. And while the book provides specific protocols for various health conditions, it can be helpful to start with something simple. Dr. Pelz offers a 30-day fasting reset, which is a great way to dip your toes into the water, so to speak.
And this reset is tailored to women's hormonal cycles.
Yes, it walks you through the different phases of the fasting cycle, recommending when to incorporate longer fasts, when to focus on nutrient-dense foods, and how to support your body throughout the month.
It sounds like a great way to start exploring the concept of fasting like a girl.
I think so too. It's a structured yet flexible approach that allows you to experiment and discover what works best for you.
It's great that she provides that kind of guidance. One thing that really struck me was how Dr. Pelz talks about the importance of mindset when it comes to fasting.
Oh yes, she really emphasizes that.
She encourages shifting your perspective from viewing fasting as deprivation to seeing it as a gift you give yourself.
I love that reframe. It really changes the whole experience.
It does. It takes the focus off of what you're missing out on and highlights the potential benefits.
And it can help you approach fasting with more positivity and a sense of empowerment.
She also talks about the power of community, especially for women who are fasting.
This is so important. Having a supportive network, whether it's friends who are also interested in fasting, an online group, or working with a health coach, can make a huge difference.
I can see that. Sharing experiences, celebrating successes, and navigating challenges together.
Exactly. It creates a sense of belonging and shared purpose.
And it taps into that power of oxytocin, that feel-good hormone that's released when we connect with others.
Which can actually reduce stress and enhance the benefits of fasting.
That's amazing. So to sum it up, Fast Like a Girl is about so much more than just skipping meals. It's about understanding your body, working with your hormones, and embracing a lifestyle that supports your overall health and well-being.
It's about reclaiming your power, tapping into your body's innate wisdom, and creating a life filled with energy, vitality, and joy.
And on that note, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to highlight some of the practical tips and hacks that Dr. Pelz shares in the book. I think these little nuggets of wisdom can make a big difference in making fasting easier and more sustainable.
Oh, absolutely. She offers so many great tips.
One of the most important ones is staying hydrated.
Right. That might seem obvious, but it's crucial.
It's easy to forget to drink enough water when you're not eating as often.
Exactly. So make sure you're drinking plenty of water, herbal teas, or other non-caloric beverages throughout the day, especially during your fasting windows.
She also offers some clever strategies for managing cravings, which I know can be a big challenge for a lot of people.
Yes, those cravings can be tough.
She suggests things like drinking coffee or tea with MCT oil,
which is a type of healthy fat that can help suppress hunger.
She also mentions engaging in distracting activities, like going for a walk or reading a book.
And she even has a list of fasted snacks. These are things you can eat that won't technically break your fast, but can help you extend those fasting windows.
I like that idea. So what are some examples of these fasted snacks?
Well, she suggests things like a small amount of nut butter, bone broth, or even coffee with full fat cream and butter.
Interesting. So those won't spike your blood sugar.
Not significantly, but she does stress that these snacks should be used sparingly and strategically.
Okay, so not a free-for-all.
Right, just a little something to help you get through those tough moments. She also talks about the importance of supporting detoxification, especially during longer fasts.
What does she suggest for that?
She recommends incorporating practices like dry brushing, sweating, and lymphatic massage.
Those sound interesting. What do those do?
They help stimulate the body's natural elimination processes.
So they can help minimize any uncomfortable detox symptoms.
Exactly. Things like headaches, fatigue, or skin breakouts.
Good to know. She also recommends using tools like a glucose monitor and a ketone meter, right?
She does. Those can be really helpful for tracking your progress and seeing how your body is responding to fasting.
How does it work?
A glucose monitor tracks your blood sugar levels so you can see how your body is transitioning into that fat-burning mode. And a ketone meter measures your ketone levels, which tells you how much your body is utilizing fat for fuel.
So they provide valuable data for personalizing your approach.
Exactly. And she also gives clear guidelines on how to break your fast properly based on your goals and the length of your fast.
So you don't want to just dive back into a huge meal after a long fast.
No, it's important to ease back into eating in a way that nourishes your body and sustains the benefits of fasting.
Right. It's all about being mindful and intentional. One of the things that initially intimidated me about fasting was the fear of feeling constantly hungry or deprived.
I think that's a common concern. But Dr. Pelz assures us that as our bodies adapt to fasting, those feelings of hunger actually diminish.
That's reassuring to hear. I also appreciated her section on hacks that make fasting effortless. She offers so many practical tips for managing hunger, boosting your energy levels, and staying motivated throughout your fasting journey.
She does, like using essential oils.
Yeah, and managing stress effectively.
And she even talks about adjusting your fasting window based on your menstrual cycle.
Right, syncing with your hormones. It's all about working with your body, not against it.
Exactly. And she also provides guidance on how to troubleshoot common issues that people encounter during fasting, like weight loss plateaus or stubborn blood sugar levels.
It's great to have those resources available. Before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to reiterate a point that Dr. Pelz makes: the importance of listening to your body.
Yes, that's so important.
She emphasizes that fasting should never feel like a punishment or a rigid set of rules to follow.
It's about tuning into your body's cues and adjusting your approach as needed.
So if you're feeling overly hungry, lightheaded, or just not yourself, it's perfectly okay to shorten your fasting window, break your fast early, or even take a break from fasting altogether.
Absolutely. It's about honoring your body's wisdom and making choices that feel supportive and sustainable for you.
Because ultimately, fasting is a tool that's meant to enhance our health and well-being, not create more stress or a sense of deprivation.
It's all about finding that rhythm that works for you, for your body and your life.
We've covered so much in our deep dive into Fast Like a Girl. We talked about the pitfalls of traditional dieting, the science behind fasting, why it's so important to tailor fasting to women's hormonal cycles, practical tips for making it easier, even how to break a fast properly.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But before we wrap things up, there's one more crucial aspect I want to touch on: the idea of fasting as a lifestyle.
Ah, yes. That's a central theme in the book. Dr. Pelz really emphasizes that.
She does.
Fasting isn't meant to be a temporary fix, like a quick weight loss gimmick or a one-time detox. It's really about making gradual, sustainable changes to your habits, shifts that will support your long-term health and well-being.
So it's not about being perfect for a few weeks or months and then going back to our old ways.
Exactly. It's about integrating fasting into your life in a way that feels, natural and enjoyable. It's about creating a new normal for yourself that prioritizes metabolic flexibility, hormonal balance, and overall vitality.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do we actually make that shift? How do we move from viewing fasting as this, challenge we do for a short time to embracing it as a way of life?
Well, I think it starts with changing our mindset. Dr. Pelz really encourages us to reframe fasting, to see it not as deprivation, but as a gift we give ourselves.
A gift. I like that.
It's a way to show our bodies respect and a powerful tool for tapping into our innate healing abilities.
It really is a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what we're giving up, we're focusing on all the amazing benefits we're gaining.
Exactly. And it allows us to approach fasting from a place of empowerment and self-care rather than fear and restriction.
Dr. Pelz also talks about finding that rhythm, that works for you, for your unique body in your life.
Right.
She presents the fasting cycle as a framework, but she's clear that it's not meant to be a rigid, one-size-fits-all solution.
It's a starting point. It's about experimenting, adjusting, and ultimately finding what feels most supportive and sustainable for your individual needs.
So it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that you don't have to go through this journey alone. Building a supportive community can be incredibly helpful.
I can see that. Having people to share experiences with, to celebrate successes with, to help you through those challenging moments.
Right. Connecting with friends who are also interested in fasting, joining an online group, or even working with a health coach can provide that sense of camaraderie and support.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Fast Like a Girl, I want to leave you with this thought. Imagine yourself a year from now having fully embraced fasting as a lifestyle. What's changed? How do you feel? What new possibilities have opened up for you? Really take some time to visualize that future self and let that vision guide you on your journey.
That's such a powerful exercise, and it really speaks to the transformative potential of fasting. It's not just about changing how we eat, it's about changing our lives.
That's a great way to wrap up our deep dive into Fast Like a Girl. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration, and we encourage you to like and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into fascinating books.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.